What's going on, guys? JHoyt back with you today. Welcome back to Call of Duty Modern Warfare. This time we got some more CDL playlist for you in the background. A couple of different 5-minute clips of just good games I've had that wasn't really enough for a full gameplay, so had to throw them together here in this one. But it's time for another CDL homestand, CDL event, whatever you want to call it. It's time for the next one. So this time we're heading to CDL Minnesota as we have our preview and predictions. Of course, it's still online, but it's still fun to have that, I guess, story in there as it is. And if you guys remember how this CDL system works, 4 teams not playing this weekend include Optic Game LA, the New York Subliners, the Paris Legion, and the London Royal Ravens. So a couple of teams that have been doing a lot better recently, and they're not playing at this event. So the 8 teams that are going to be covered in upcoming matches here, but we have some changes since the last event. The first one, some more GA, some more gentlemen's agreements to not use, or things that are just now banned through the players themselves, but not on the official rulebook. The first thing is the auto tack sprint. Now, if you didn't know what this is, basically in game there is a setting in the controls or wherever the heck it is that you can turn on auto tack sprint. So in the game you can tactical sprint, which is like running fast with your gun. I don't really know, but you can always have it on. So basically the game auto tactical sprints for you. So they now have that agreement that they're not going to use that thing, even though it is still in the official rulebook. Teams are not going to be using that. Second on that list of GAs is the Merc foregrip. Now, I understand why this one is another attachment that, made the MP5 godlike. The problem is, the MP5 is still godlike. So, I think there's other things they can do, different attachments that they could ban from the MP5, such as the, the 10mm 30 round mag that makes it so, the MP5 is just incredible. I was reading a lot about that and why people said, why didn't they ban this? Because this seems like the biggest problem. And, maybe there's trying out Merc foregrip, and then maybe in a little bit they'll try out the 10mm mag thing and see how that goes. But that's number 2 on the changes list. The third thing is snaking. Now this one is basically when you just kind of go prone and go crouched quickly, so it has a little bit of an animation to it, so it's harder to hit people when they're behind cover. I didn't really see this too much, but obviously it's super annoying. It's kind of a movement bug in a way, and it was just kind of annoying, and it just shouldn't be in the game to begin with. But that's it for our new GAs. However, there is a couple of roster changes as well. So the Florida Mutineers, a team that started off the year hot, then made a roster change, swapping out Pristini for Pharaoh when, Pristini took his little break there. Now Pristini's on Chicago, but this time Florida swaps out Mox, who was, I believe, their main AR. I don't remember exactly. So they bench Mox in exchange for Awakening, who is a amateur player that just got signed to their squad. So obviously it's going to be a debut for him. Don't really know much about him. I don't think I've really heard about him before. But it's a good chance for another young player to come in and try his hand in the CDL this year. And our second roster change for this event is coming through the LA Guerrillas camp as they send Spart from their starting roster to the bench in exchange for Saints, who was one of their backups. This one, I don't really see much reason behind it other than maybe they want a little bit more leadership in their starting lineup now that, seeding actually makes a difference, in that, being last place doesn't really do much for you. So maybe they want to start trying again. I don't really know, but that's the 2 roster changes. We covered the gentlemen's agreements. Now it's time for the matches. So our first match comes in Group A, Round 1, as the Seattle Surge face off against the Atlanta FaZe. Now another quick note, Seattle last event used Pander when they said Enable was supposed to be playing, so I don't know if Pander or Enable is starting for them, but either way, I think this one's going to be completely one-sided. Atlanta FaZe just too much of a dominant team. Seattle just not in a good spot. They're not good. You know, they did swap around some roles where they put one of the best ARs of all time, Octane, on a submachine gun. So I don't really know what came behind that decision, but I definitely don't think that one was right. That Octane is a very good superstar AR, stuck in a really bad situation right now. But Karma now on that main AR role as they look to try to switch up something and find something that works out. But like I said, in this one, I'm predicting Atlanta to come away with a 3-0. Our second matchup of Group A, Round 1, features the Minnesota Roker versus the Dallas Empire. Now, there was rumors that Minnesota was going to be changing. However, I believe they still have the same roster, so I don't know if they swapped around some roles or just, how they play or what they did. But I think its coach came out and said that they were changing some stuff, before this event. So what they're going to do, I'm not exactly sure, but they're facing off against the number 2 team, or top 3 team in the world, the Dallas Empire. And again, just like the previous matchup, I'm predicting pretty easy 3-0 in favor of Dallas. Now, sticking in Group A, Round 1, it's going to feature 2 of the best teams in the league, the Atlanta FaZe and the Dallas Empire. Now, this one could go either way. I know Dallas has been a good team all year long. Well, not really, but, once they found their footing, they've been a really good team. Atlanta has been, arguably the top team all year long so far, basically since the start of the league. And this one is going to be close. I mean, I don't see this one being a blowout in either direction. So, I mean, it's only right to say Game 5, super close, super intense. And I'm going to predict Atlanta in this one, 3-2. But we got to catch up on the loser side of the bracket for Group A, as our first matchup will feature the Seattle Surge versus the Minnesota Roker. Now, again, the Minnesota Roker have been struggling. The Seattle Surge have been struggling. So who's going to win this one? I'm predicting the Minnesota Roker will take this one, although they haven't really been in good form recently. And they've just kind of been steadily declining. That I think they'll take this one against Seattle. I don't think they're going to go much farther than that. But I'm going to predict the Roker win this one 3-2. With that win, though, it moves Minnesota on to Round 2. Facing off against that loser of Atlanta and Dallas, which is going to be Dallas in this case. But just like the first round, I think Dallas is going to take this one away easily 3-0. Moving them on to the semifinals. From Group A, we're going to have Atlanta from the winner's side and Dallas from the loser's side. But we got 2 more teams to get into the semifinals with, which brings us Group B. So in Round 1 for Group B, it's going to feature the Los Angeles Guerrillas versus the Toronto Ultra. And although LA is on the bottom of the bottom of the table, bottom of the standings team, they made another roster change. I don't feel like they have any hope. They finally got another win under their belt against Seattle. But this time, I'm going to pick Toronto. Right? They've been on a little bit of an upward spree. They're starting to figure out how to play again. And I think they're almost in that Tier 3 team where they're not just like an easy win anymore. They're going to possibly be able to take out some teams. Do I think they have the potential to win a tournament right now? No. But I feel like they could definitely take some of those mid-tier teams and those lower teams and just beat them pretty handedly. I'm predicting the Toronto Ultra to beat LA 3-1. Our second matchup features the Chicago Huntsmen and the Florida Mutineers. Now, as we covered before the matches started, that Florida made a roster change. Mox on the bench for the newcomer in Awakening. Now, this one, remember, this has been a storyline all year long so far. It was Pristini versus Arcides, right? Pristini was on that Florida squad. Arcides has been on that Chicago squad. But now they're together. So now we have Chicago, I don't want to say it final form, but now we have Chicago new and improved. And they're facing off against the injured and in a vulnerable spot Florida Mutineers. And not only did they lose Pristini from their squad, but now they're losing Mox in favor of a rookie, a brand new AM player, because things just weren't working out. So they're not in good form either. So just like Atlanta and Dallas in the first round up in Group A, I'm predicting Chicago to take this one away 3-0, right? They have to, you know, they just came off of a win in the last event. So I'm definitely predicting Chicago to walk away with this one really easily. Our round 2 matchup features the Toronto Ultra versus the Chicago Huntsmen. Now, like I said before, Toronto does have that potential to upset those middle tier teams and beat those lower tier teams, but I just don't think they have a chance against those top teams in the game like Chicago, like Atlanta, and Dallas. So I'm predicting that Chicago comes away with this one 3-0, maybe 3-1, depending on, you know, the search, how good Chicago's gotten in the search and destroy game mode. But I'm predicting that Chicago's will move on to the semifinals. But in order to get our last team for the semifinals, we gotta catch up on the losers bracket, where it's gonna feature the Los Angeles Guerrillas and the Florida Mutineers. Now, you know, although I didn't really give Florida much of a chance against Chicago in the first round, I do feel like they could beat the Guerrillas in this one. So I'm going to predict 3-1. Could be game 5, could be 3. I mean, this one could be all over the place, but I feel like Florida is just an overall better team than LA, and that LA just, you know, can't really beat anyone better than, like, Seattle. So Florida coming away 3-1. Our second losers match in Group B features Toronto and Florida. And this one, I think Toronto could possibly win this one. I mean, although we didn't really give them a chance against the Huntsmen, I think, again, they could beat Florida, especially how much they are struggling right now. I do feel like Chicago, you know, will beat them enough to where they're like, okay, they gotta start thinking about how to beat these other teams because they're not gonna be able to beat those top teams. So I think it's gonna go game 5, Toronto. I don't want to say with the upset, but I guess if you're looking at seeds and standings overall, that it would be. So I'm predicting Toronto come away in the game 5, moving them on to the semifinals. So our final 4 teams in the semifinals features Group A's winner in Atlanta FaZe, Group B's loser in the Toronto Ultra. You have the second matchup of the Chicago Huntsmen, winners of Group B, and you have the Dallas Empire of the losers of Group A. So this one's going to be good, right? This features all 3 of the best teams in the world, and then Toronto. So I feel like in this one, Atlanta's not going to have a problem getting to the finals through Toronto. You know, just, again, Toronto could be that upset team, but I just don't feel like they're going to have enough to beat Atlanta, especially given Atlanta's good form right now. I mean, they haven't really struggled all year long. They've been a good team all year long. And, you know, it's just hard to stop a team like that, especially given the caliber of that team. But our second matchup features Chicago's probably biggest rivalry of the year so far, the Dallas Empire, going against Chicago. And this one could be back and forth. You know, I think Dallas beat them, what, once? I think, was that online? I don't even remember if they have. But we haven't seen this matchup in a little bit. But Dallas, you know, with the recent changes to the, you know, movement and the tactical sprint thing and MP5s, that it might hurt them a little bit. I haven't really seen their scrims to see how their, you know, form's going, but Chicago has been playing well recently. They won the last event. They have a new roster that they like and are working with. So I think I'm going to take Chicago in this one. Now, I'm not just playing it biasly that Chicago's always in the final, but when you have such a strong team as Chicago and Dallas and Atlanta, you pretty much have to pick them to go to the grand finals and go them, you know, at least to the semifinals, right? Unless one team really has just an awful day and they just play like crap the entire day, it's so hard to not to pick them. But in this one, we're going to have the matchup that everyone's been waiting for, the Atlanta FaZe versus the Chicago Huntsmen. Now this matchup could go either way. Atlanta been a solid team all year long. Chicago has been a good team all year long. Both teams have won 2 events, I believe, so far. Both solid teams, both solid rosters. Chicago new and improved. Atlanta maintaining their form all year long. I mean, I didn't even put a winner on this, or at least I probably shouldn't have, because it could literally go either way. It all depends on the maps, all depends on how Chicago comes out and plays. You know, is this the roster that can take down Atlanta? Now, if this were to happen, now I know, again, this is online, but if this matchup was on LAN, does that make Chicago the best team in the CDL if they win this matchup? Now again, there's a little asterisk of online. But, I mean, Chicago's beaten Dallas all year long. Pretty much, I think, except for one matchup. I think some reason I feel like they won once. But if Chicago beats Atlanta, does that make them the best team in the CDL? It's got to put them in contention for the, tied for top 2 at that point. But this one, again, could go either way. But, of course, I got to pick my boys. Not really the hometown team, but Chicago Huntsmen, Game 5 versus Atlanta. And, not to pick Chicago every event, but it's so hard to root against them when, they're obviously a little bit biased on my side. But, obviously we have 3 of the best teams in the world in the semifinals in these predictions. So, got to pick the guys that I'm most comfortable with. Atlanta definitely could take this one. They could get that, matchup that they wanted in this one as well. It's going to be a good event overall. I'm really excited to see Atlanta, Dallas, and Chicago all in the same bracket. And we're going to see the matchup of Atlanta and Dallas in the quarterfinals in the first round, or in the first, I guess, group play. And then we're going to see Chicago and Dallas in the semifinals. So, if my predictions all come true, I'd be super happy because that's going to give the best event forward. But, guys, with all that being said, thank you so much for watching. If you did enjoy, hit the like button down below if you haven't already. Hit the subscribe button, and as always, guys, we'll see you next time.